announce their opening.
Yep.
That's where it's coming from. People see that in the news.
Okay, we're now live on YouTube. I'll start recording here. I think we're recording.
All right. So I see we are recording and we are live on YouTube. It is 7 o'clock, so we can call to order this evening. First order of business is the agenda. Were there any changes or additions to the agenda? Not seeing any, thank you. Declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest. Again, seeing none. All right. Delegations, presentations, or petitions. I will ask SAO Hood to turn your camera on just for a couple minutes, if you could, please.
Figure out how to do it. Oh, down here. There we go.
There
All
we
right.
go.
How's that?
So
You look better with the camera off.
Thank you.
So beside you at your desk there's a little silver box. So I am happy to present SAO Grant Hood with the Canadian Association of Municipal Administrators Long-Term Service Award for 10 years of service as the Senior Administrative Officer at the town of Inuvik. In recognition of your 10 years, CAMA has provided the sterling silver pin designed by Maggie Jewelers and Design.
Oh,
From myself and from council, congratulations, Grant, and thank you for your 10 years of hard work.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done, Grant.
Congratulations,
Well
Grant.
done.
Can I turn my camera off now?
I
No.
Have you had any indication from Alana?
She was supposed to phone in. Let me check and see. I don't have a text from her. She was supposed to text me if she was having an issue. So
Just gonna make another quick note here. SAO Hood did also receive the SAO of the Year award from the, Elgant?
Elgant. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to remember what the letters actually stand for.
Local Government Administrators of the Northwest Territories.
Thank you. So congratulations on that as well. I'm sure when that award comes in, we can do another one of these lovely recognition ceremonies and you'll be all over it. So with that, we'll move on to public question period. I do not believe we had any submissions this week, but SAO Hood, I'll look to you for confirmation.
I did not receive any.
Okay.
And Councillor Merrill will be dialing in here in a minute.
Okay, and I see that Mr. Hartley has joined us now too. All right, so with that, we'll move to adoption of the minutes. 6.1, the minutes of the September 14th and 16th, 2020 council meetings. Were there any questions, comments, or discussion on these minutes? Seeing none, all right. 6.2 are the minutes of the September 10th, 2020 Bylaw Review Committee meeting. Any questions, comments, or discussion on these minutes?
Does it say anything to you?
Hi, Ed. All right, seeing none. With that, we'll move on to the minutes of the September 22nd Public Works Committee meeting. Questions, comments, or discussion on these minutes?
For some reason, it's not liking it.
Again, seeing none. On to the action items list. I printed one. Are there any questions or comments on the action items list? Councillor Wood?
Can you tell me the status of item number 13, the Ski Club Lease? That's been there for quite some time now.
Right. So right now what we're waiting on is we had a form signed by the ski club. Land titles didn't like it, so we have to get the president to sign a different form. Once that's done, then we can proceed a little further. But it's just been a little timing to try and get her to get to sign it.
Okay, thanks, Grant.
I'm just gonna make some noise getting a Councilor Miro on the line here.
Shall we continue in the meantime? Councillor Barlock?
Great, thank you. Just with respect to item number 4, the tourism gateway sign. In here we have the tender closed and submissions were higher than anticipated. Reviews underway regarding options, but then looking at the capital projects report later down in the agenda, it looks like a bunch of money has been spent, and it talks there that things are underway. So I'm just wondering if the fabrication actually started on the sign. Do we get the issue sorted out with the cost? And because it's talking about mentioned that they're hoping to have the stuff shipped up before the ferry goes out. So just want to get a difference in what's being reported in the two sections. So just know where we're at with that.
Okay, we'll just take a minute and let Grant get back because he'll have to answer that one.
Thank you. You will now be placed into the conference.
Sorry, it was on the sign, so it says.
Yeah, the action item said that their options are being discussed, but then in capital projects, it says that things are kind of underway and open to have stuff shipped up before the ferry goes out. So it just seems to be saying two different things.
I have to apologize, a typo of mine that the item that the tender closed submissions should be on the visitor center. On it, for the sign, everything's a go. That's
Okay.
just a typo on mine. Part, I apologize.
No worries. Thank you.
We are anticipating it up before the ferry closes.
Anything further on the action items list? Seeing none. On to new business 8.1, the request for closure of Mackenzie Road for the Eskimo Inn demolition. We do have Vince Brown from the Mackenzie Delta Hotel Group in council chambers. If there are any specific questions to this item. SAO Hood, did you want to do a brief presentation of the item or should we move right into questions here? I'll leave it to you on that one.
I think it's quite self-explanatory as far as the documentation goes. I would say with Mr. Brown here, it would be better for him if council has any questions.
All right, so with that, we'll entertain questions. Councillor Wood, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that this application's in, that the businesses have been consulted. However, are we going to allow foot traffic on the far side of the street? And I'm thinking access to the bank.
Yes.
Okay,
The plan
that's-
calls for the road closed up to the sidewalk, and the sidewalk will remain open. There'll be a physical barrier there.
okay, that's the only problem I had with it. So if
And then
that's allowed, that's fine.
And when we're done at 6 o'clock at night, we'll pull the fences back in so that the road will be open.
Thank you.
Councillor Barlock.
Great. That was one of my questions. The other one was just to be clear, because in the description, it wasn't entirely clear until I looked at the diagram later. The barricade you're talking about will just basically put around and the closure of the road will be just in front of the hotel, essentially. When you first read it, it talked about closing Mackenzie Road, I thought, oh, geez, you're trying to close the whole road.
No.
But later on, I saw the diagram, the outline of the fence was around the hotel. So I just want to confirm that's actually what's planned.
Yes.
So the request is just to close that section, say from the old Mac Travel building up to the professional building.
The fence will start where the professional building and Eskimo Inn meet. Directly across, it'll travel directly across the road there. It'll carry, I guess, to the south, down past the bank to where the loading bay is at Northern, and then return back, and the fence will go all the way down through the driveway between Mac Travel and the Eskimo.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Otherwise, I think it's a good idea. I mean, we're dealing with potentially hazardous materials in here, so I think safety is a big consideration. So I think this is a good approach to take.
Thank you. Anything further from council? None. All right, hearing none. So with that, thank you, Mr. Brown, for attending this evening. We will make our decision on Wednesday night.
Okay, I think Grant Hood has my phone number. If anybody wants to call, if they have any questions that they need to deal with the public or whatever, I'll be available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Councillor Wayman has just joined.
Okay. So with that, we move on to
Okay, see you guys.
item 8.2, the request for donation of space from the Kazuri Judo Club. And we do have Ed Hartley on the line as well, if there are any questions from council. So again, the council brief was quite detailed. So if everyone's comfortable, we can move right to questions again. SAO Hood, did you have anything to add there?
No, as you know, I did send out to council and that some documents that Mr. Hartley had sent me today about their safety plan, which is very excellent as far as they seem to have everything covered.
Okay, thank you. So were there any questions from council? Councillor Barlick?
Thank you. I can start off saying I completely empathize with the application from the Judo Club because it was a lot of the same considerations when we're talking with the wrestling that I used to do, including the cost to participants and minimizing those costs to open it up for as broad an audience as possible. So I definitely empathize with that. Ed, I guess I just asked, are you still looking to try to get Sundays and Wednesdays, or is that adjusted at all? Looks like there was some thought about maybe trying to change that a bit, or just going to Sundays only.
Well, that was traditionally what we had, was Wednesdays and Sundays, not necessarily have to stay that way, because I know that I guess I was informed that maybe some council meetings happening possibly Wednesday nights, every other Wednesday night. So I don't know if that would affect us being able to have Wednesday nights or not. For our, trying to get everything back to exactly the way we had it before as much as possible, because just for consistency, and who knows, at any point we'd have to stop again. Hopefully not, but that's the way it is. The other thing to consider is this is also temporary, because as soon as the school opens back up and we can go back in, that would be the place that we would go. Probably not this year, but maybe next year, or whenever that does change for the school. The other issue is with the school, if they do open up, we still may not be able to get in there right away, because we do have adults in our class. And I know that the phys ed classes possibly may be opening up in middle October, maybe a little later. But again, we have no idea unless it comes down through the school and through the DEA and how that works. But yes, Wednesday, at least twice a week would be the goal. But definitely Sundays would be the sort of the minimum requirement. And we do have a 4-hour time limit. That's probably, even when I did it at the school, it took us 4 hours to get through it. And I would probably have to shorten the classes just a little bit as it is, because of the time necessary to clean the mats in between sessions, because we do 3 sessions: the pre-judo, which is the 5, 6, 7-year-olds, the youth group, which is the 8 to 12 group, or ish anyways, and then the teenage to adult group, which is the last session within that 4 hours. So I have to clean the mats basically 4 times a night, before we start, in between each session, and at the end. So which is why I requested that time, the amount of time that's needed. As part of our COVID plan, that's through the NWT Judo Association. A mixture of the Judo Canada guidelines and the Emerging Wisely plan. So we sort of merged the two of them together, because there were some recommendations by Judo Canada that we didn't necessarily have to follow, because they weren't required by the NWT Protect plan. So. But yes, that's the minimum we need, is at least 1 day a week. 2 would be great.
Yeah, so I can just, for Councillor Salaki, just to follow up to, I definitely understand the whole setting up and tearing down the mats issue at the same thing as well. Have you guys come up with a solution to the storage issue that was identified? Has there been any consideration of trying to use the coat room off to the side of the hallway towards the bathrooms?
Honestly, for me, I did speak to Steve about this, and he's mentioned the canteen wasn't being used. If it's not a big issue, we could always leave them against the wall. They're just, and you've seen them before, they're standing up mats, and they're probably about 3 feet wide, about 6 feet tall. But we can always throw a tarp over top of them if that wasn't a big deal, and leave them against the wall, unless it's an issue with movable space or whatever. But yeah, but that's something we'd have to rectify. But I was figured that we'd get the space, and then sort of that'd be a secondary issue.
Yeah, I figured your mats were similar to the ones that we used to have. So I think that coat room may be a good area just to tuck them out of the way, and it won't interfere with any other activities that may or may not go on in there.
Sure.
And one of the considerations was just the amount of time being requested. And while we don't necessarily have a lot of requests to get in that space right now, we may encounter some at some point. So we need to sort of be ready to have the ability to accommodate other people who may be looking, especially if they're going to be paying customers. So just something to consider, but I'd love to hear what other councillors think.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Salaki?
Sorry, I'm on my phone, that's why I've had the video off, but it says that you're not a registered society and that you're not for profit, but you're not a registered organization, which all of these registrations are either free or about $50 through the NWT. I'm just wondering why you're not a registered organization, and if you're claiming to be not for profit, you actually have to be organized. I have to have some sort of paperwork to state that. So I'm just wondering if you're going through that process, and if not, how come?
So we considered that a while back. I guess the consideration was, wasn't sure in the last couple of years whether I would attach myself to the school, because I did teach at the school, and whether we'd sort of fall under the school's jurisdiction. Decided to keep it away from the school because we started merging in and getting more adults involved outside of that. But nonprofit, reason why I said nonprofit is because everything is, we don't make money. Everything is basically free. Everything is volunteer work for myself and some of the other coaches and volunteers. We are affiliated with the NWT Judo Association, which is an organized institution basically, and everything we do then goes through them. So, but for Kazuri Judo Club, it's not. But we actually had the paperwork filled out. We just hadn't, because there was a few people that dropped out because we had to have at least 5 people, I think it was, for that organization status, and a couple of people decided I guess they moved on to do different things, but it's just something that yeah, we haven't had a need for it up to this point.
Well, you're essentially operating as a club and not as a society. It was the same thing for
right.
the wrestling team.
Right, and we do have affiliation with the Judo and Judo Canada.
Individual club operating under the umbrella of the territorial sport organization, and their insurance covered the liability for our individual.
Right.
And that's what the registration fee gets paid to the territorial sport organization. Right.
So this year it's going to be $30 registration fee. $25 goes to Judo Canada, which covers their insurance of $2 million liability. We also, the other $5 goes to the affiliation for NWT Judo, which also pays insurance for myself and some other things. So,
Councillor Salaki, a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry, I missed some of that because Councillor Barlick started speaking, and I guess my phone's having a lag, so I missed a few of those things. But I would like to clarify, first of all, I really love that space being used, and I think it's wonderful to have options for people in our community. So I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I just want to be clear, because the other thing is we've talked about before with council, and so I have a couple of questions for SAO Hood, actually. We've clarified with council that we need to be careful that we don't set a precedent that we give things for free and then have other clubs come and say, well, we want this for free and we want this for free. So we just need to make sure that whatever our choices are here, that we are being fair to clubs that have been using the space and have been paying. So my question for SAO Hood is for some of the exercise classes that have happened in the space, for example, the boot camp on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the ballet class that was there last year, these were all operating as clubs. Were any of them offered a discount in their fees, or is this something that if we're willing to do this going forward, that we're willing to write a policy that states if you are a club, or that there's parameters to allow for these sorts of things so that we are being fair to everyone? If we start offering the coat room as a space for someone to store their equipment, and then we rent it out to an organization for an event, what does that then mean for them having to move their things? So I just want to be clear on what we have allowed in the past for clubs and what we are willing to give up with the space going forward.
SAO Hood, if you don't mind, I'll just talk real quick on that couple of those points. So at the last council meeting, there was actually a fee schedule passed that would allow groups who've been displaced during the COVID pandemic to have that $25 fee. So that is kind of the equalizing playing field to start from. For a session, because I can speak to boot camp itself, we're actually operated as a program of the MSC, not as a rental. And so for example, for that class, it's different. I'm not sure if the ballet class was the same. I know that yoga was also operated as a function of the MSC. So that's just my 2 bits, but I'm sure SAO Hood has more to add.
I agree with the consistency. As far as I know, the ballet was a paying customer. We don't have a whole lot of clubs that do use the facility at this moment in time, but 2020 is changing things, and that's why we're having these sessions coming to us, requests coming to us. So I will go back, as Mayor Kulikowski had mentioned, we actually specifically changed our fees and policies for this, for these types of circumstances where people have been displaced because they can't get into the regular, and we've reduced to just what we feel is a minimum wage amount, because we do have to pay for that building, and you'll see that it is not that cheap to run some days. So we're just looking at, because there is work that we have to do after hours or during when these things are done, as far as cleaning, that we have to under the public health order. So that also goes to looking at minimizing or reducing at least what it's costing the town. And as far as the storage goes, the cloakroom would not be a place, just like the canteen, for the specific reason is the MSC is open for rentals. And so there is always the potential, even though it may be only 25 people, they may want to use the canteen because it is part of the community hall, and the same with the coat room. Having said that, with the storage, and there may be some options that have come to light since this was submitted as far as storage, but I need to clarify depending on what's happening with hockey. Because there was talk that the hockey was going to be using the dressing rooms. We are hearing now that they may not be allowed to use the dressing rooms. And if that's the case, then that may be an alternative storage space, but I can't guarantee that right now until everything's finalized with hockey.
Thank you, SAO Hood. Councillor Barlock, you had your hand up before.
Yeah, just maybe I'll offer a bit of information which may help with some of the questions Councillor Salaki had as well. So as Mr. Hartley talked about, so he's a club that's sort of affiliated with the school to a certain degree. And I had the same situation with the wrestling team. Part of the reason to do that affiliation with the school is because you can get access to using the gym under their sort of school team hours, which comes for free. After 7 o'clock, if you are the volleyball, the soccer, the cadets or whatever, you are a paying customer at the school as well at that point. And I would have been in the same boat with my team, is I wouldn't have been able to afford to run the program without accessing the school for free under that affiliation with them. So I do definitely understand where he's coming from. And like him, we charge $5 as a minimum affiliation fee for the territorial association. That was simply just to cover them off under the insurance. And again, just to not limit access to people and families who maybe not be able to afford higher levels of fees, and just increase participation. So I can see some of these things as a bit different than sort of the regular club, where they're normally would not be even able to access the school for free. They would also have to be a paying customer over there, so have to build that into their operational model. Whereas this is a much different situation, where normally they are operating with minimal overhead in order to maximize participation and benefit to the group participants, because they were able to access the facility for free because of that affiliation at the school. So it is a little bit different than sort of the normal situation with a regular club that may be doing things such as adult rec soccer and stuff. They're paying customers, and they would have been paying customers at the school as well. So that's part of their operational model, and they have to account for that in their budgeting. So that may help describe the situation a little bit better as well. So that's sort of why I'm supportive of potentially giving this for free to the club, because it definitely changes how they operate and whether they're able to operate by charging them the fee. The one concern I have, just again, I understand the need for those 4-hour chunks of time, but to offer that up twice a week where we may have other people interested in accessing the facility, I would even consider at this point saying, yes, we can give it twice a week, with the understanding that at some point down the line, if we do have a request come in for a specific conflicting day, we may have to request Judo to sort of cancel that day or something, to allow another user to get into the facility. So I'd put that out there for the council to think about as well.
I can speak to this for just one quickly, that even at the school, there was lots of evenings where we had to cancel because it was either DEA meetings or like report card night and stuff like that. So we're quite used to having a schedule done out and saying, you know what, on this date there's something going on. Like there was a basketball tournament or a volleyball tournament. So, which is why we asked for 2 nights, because over the course of the year, because we do run right until usually the second week of September, all the way to basically the first week of June. So we have lots of time, but enough classes to sort of fill in there. But yeah, but that's not an issue.
SAO Hood?
Oh, I don't have too much. I think that certainly Sundays is it, in talking with the Director of Community Services about the building, Sundays is certainly not that a big of conflict or where we would run into issues. The Wednesday night, like we say, there is a move that council would like to start getting back into in-person meetings potentially, and using the MSC so that we can follow all the different guidelines. Also, the Wednesdays can have the potential of, if we have a function first thing in the morning on Thursday, or even on that Wednesday where it's booked, then getting everything set up could cause some grief. But again, that would be up to the Director of Community Services and the facility foreman as to what could be done. Obviously, we want to support every administration, certainly wants to support everything we can under the circumstances, and we're certainly not opposed to this request. We just want to know that there is, and Mr. Hartley, I appreciate you saying that the potential for cancellations, that you'd be open to that, because that makes this, in my opinion, a much more feasible situation.
Okay, thank you, SAO Hood. Deputy Mayor McDonald? I think if you speak, Grants will pick you up, maybe? No?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So thank you very much for the information that you've provided to us. There's a significant amount there. I've read through it all. So I think my only hang up or hold up is the waiving of the fee. And the reason that concerns me is we have other user groups of the facility. We have hockey, we have speed skating, we have curling, figure skating. And are we prepared to, as a council, waive all of their fees as well? Because they could easily come to us and say, listen, we can't do our normal fundraising with bingos, and we're financially strapped. We can't afford the ice rink. We're inherently cheap to operate, for parents having to pay for their children to attend. And we've, as a council, already reduced the fees for youth to $25 an hour, which doesn't even cover the cost of custodial staff and maintenance and lights and heat of the facility. Although most of that has to be on anyway, there is a reason for that fee. So I have no issue with the dates, the times. It sounds like you're very willing to work with administration on those. But I do have a bit of a hold up when it comes to the $25 fee, only because that will also have an impact on other organizations. So that's my concern. And I appreciate you doing it for free and for youth, but you also mentioned that there's adults. So perhaps adults have to pay to help offset the cost of the youth. That's not for me to dictate how you run your club, but I have no issue with the use. I just have a concern about the waiving of the $25 fee. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McDonald. Go
If I can
ahead.
respond quickly. Whether we go ahead or not, I won't be charging fees. What will happen basically is I'll have to go find funding. That'll be the way through. Our philosophies are that Judo will be inclusive and will not cost anybody anything. Like I said, this is a temporary basis thing, so it's not like hockey and some of those other ones, because they will always be at the MSC. Whereas for us, like I said, it's going to be a period of time, a year, who knows how long, and then we will be going back to the school. I pretty much probably could commit to most of this year, because I doubt that anything's going to change between now and the spring. The other thing is to consider too is for the last 3 years, we've actually had the per capita the most enrollment for Judo in a lot of some of the western and northern provinces and territories. That being said, we're going from 0 overhead to potentially $800 a month. So that's a big jump for us. And like I said, we don't have a budget for that. And I don't plan on having a budget. Like I said, if we do have to go ahead and pay, it'll be my job to go basically and find it somewhere. And I do have some sources that could certainly help out, but a negotiation of it would be, if there's some way we can negotiate that would help as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from council at this time? Oh, Deputy Mayor McDonald, go ahead.
If I may just respond. I appreciate that. I understand everything you've said. There is now COVID funding for displaced organizations out there that can be applied for. I don't know about the nonprofit status, how that affects you. I really don't know much about or read into it. That's not for me, but there is COVID funding from the federal government for organizations that have had to adapt. So I just help point you in that direction as well. But my comment from original stands. Sure.
No, and I understand that. I'm not against that. And like I said, it was like, you don't get what you don't ask for either, right? So, but I haven't looked into some of the federal government stuff, and it's more of an organizations that are looking for those things. They're high performance sport athletes and stuff like that. That has to do with a lot of that. I looked into it, and it was very vague, and a lot of the information I'd almost have to find somebody that sort of dealt with that a little more to get some more information. But I do have some contacts with Sport North through Judo as well, because we have some of our colleagues that are actually part of Sport North. No, I appreciate any help that you can give us for sure.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions at this time? Seeing none. So thank you, Mr. Hartley, for your time. One thing that I know from my own experience in sports is if you can reach out to your TSO, they may be able to help you find some of those funding sources as well, right? So the NWT Judo for sure would have more resources anyway to help you find, right?
Oh, for sure. I'm actually vice president of the NWT Judo Association as well. So we're working on that, and we do have some avenues, like I said, but some of the avenues are for sport development, athlete development, and equipment and things like that. Sometimes they don't always cover rentals. So we can shift some money around. It's just the easier we can get it, the better it is for us, because we are, essentially a smaller sport organization, but we're getting bigger all the time.
Great, thank you. So I will close up then and just say thank you, Ed. You're free to leave. We'll make our decision on Wednesday evening. All right, thank you. So if there's no further conversation there, we'll move on to item 8.3, which is the proposed fees and charges policy amendments for the solid waste disposal facility tipping fees. This was an item that has been requested multiple times by council over the last 9 months or so, as we've had to deal with some dumping fees, requests for changes and discounts. And so I will hand this over to SAO Hood to present, but it did come through the Public Works Committee meeting and was asked to come forward to council from there. So SAO Hood, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you. I think again, it's relative in the briefing note, it's relatively self-explanatory. We did sit down in administration and look at the different options of how we do it there, from a point of view of ensuring that our revenue stream still remains, and that even with the idea that an understanding that there's no guarantee for fees under this, there's no guarantee every year how much you're going to get, because it is all over and above the amount that that is budgeted. You just don't know. It could be a good year, as we've seen this year. It could be a bad year. It's just volume. But we did feel that the way we've now looked at it is with the loads, is having, based on historically looking at the size of the loads as far as weight goes for the trucks, coming up with like a minimum weight where the first X is free, so to speak, or a flat rate, and then anything over and above would be an additional price. But if you, depending on the project, if you have a number of loads, then you would get, quote unquote, maybe a volume discount, and that's where we're going at, where everything is reduced. We did take into consideration, as noted, some of the recent decisions that were made by councils on giving, for example, the Eskimo Inn with the 15% discount. We took that as sort of a bellwether to start, and then went from there. Obviously, for most of the times for this, we do not get huge volume loads. They're once in a while type thing. For the most part, nothing will change that much for individual smaller projects, because we said 0 to 50 loads is still the base price, but it is looking at the larger the load, then the more work there is on the contractor's part, on the capping and things like that. So that's another item. And also, as noted, these fees haven't been looked at or changed since 2011. That's about all I have.
Great, thank you, SAO Hood. Were there any questions from council? Councillor Wood.
Yes, thank you, Grant, for all the work you put into this. This is exactly what I was looking for. What it does is give us a level playing field for everybody. There's no longer any guesswork involved, and I think that's exactly what I was getting at. Now we have something to go by. Nobody will be able to say we're favoring one person over another. And it's the whole element of fairness that we've now addressed. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you, Councillor Wood. Any further questions or comments from council at this time? Deputy Mayor McDonald.
So one of my questions for SAO Hood, when would the implementation of this be? Will it be at the end of the current landfill's contract, or will it be immediate?
No, it would be when third reading is given to the bylaw coming up, where there's amendments to the bylaw, which then references these fees, and then it would become into effect at the time of third reading of the bylaw.
So I'll stand by my thoughts on this then, that I think that should be deferred until the end of the current contractor's contract, as this will be a complete change of what was bid on for that contract, unless I'm mistaken. Because I believe currently the contract for the landfill is based on tipping fees as currently published on our website. And if we change this mid-stride, are we open ourselves up to litigation or problems in the future?
Well, in response to that, I would say that for the most part, the fees aren't changing. If you notice, the base fee for the first 50 loads still remains. For the extra large, it's still the $325, which is what we were doing. The same with the next level. And in fact, there is a potential that if somebody comes in with a larger truck over the 20,000 pounds, then actually the contractor will get more money. So, and in the contract, the fees and set are variable, and it does say that they can change. And we have changed, we have given discounts, we have, and et cetera already. So therefore, I believe that this is still viable and can be done.
Okay, thank you, SAO Hood. Councillor Barlock.
Yeah, thank you. No, I benefit of having a look at this and asking some questions in the Public Works Committee meeting. So I think this does represent something that we were looking for as far as the structure. It gives certainty to the town, it gives certainty to the contractor operating the landfill, and it gives certainty to developers that may be looking to access some of these things so they can work these numbers into their budgets and what their anticipated workloads are. So I don't think there's an issue with implementing it as soon as we go through our third reading for exactly the reasons SAO had said. It states in the contract for the landfill that the fees may vary at any time. So I don't think that's an issue. And then these large projects are not that often. They're few and far between. So it's not a huge impact on operational costs, I don't think. I'd be surprised if we have any more between now and the end of the current landfill contract. They don't happen very often. So, but again, this provides it all in black and white. It can avoid, as Councillor Wood said, the guesswork and trying to figure out calculations in our head about what we want to do and this or that. It's just, it's clear cut, it's out there. It won't even come to council anymore for most situations. So I'm in support of these fee changes as proposed.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments at this time? Deputy Mayor McDonald?
I'd just like to ask SAO Hood if he's reached out or if one of his staff have reached out to the landfill operator and discussed this with him, or is this something that's just going to be handed to him?
SAO Hood?
This was not discussed. This is a recommendation from council of wanting, and we've looked at it. I just also want to clarify that the contract with the solid waste site, the contract is there for the, and the pricing is based on what we pay a monthly for the regular garbage. There is no guarantee of any of these funds going to the contractor based on that they would get X amount of revenue in a year or any time. They could get zero, just like the town could get zero. There's no guarantee, and therefore the contract actually refers to what it would cost to do the normal capping operations, the day-to-day operations of it for the day-to-day collection.
Thank you, SAO Hood. So are there any further questions at this time? I am seeing none. All right, with that, we can move on to item 8.4, which is the COVID-19 impact on the town of Inuvik. And I will hand this over to SAO Hood. You are muted.
I'm just going to see where. So hopefully everybody can see on their screen the presentation. Okay. So thank you. I just want to give a quick recap, a little bit update council where we are regarding the COVID and the situation, that what effect it has had on the town financially. If I can get this working. Oh, there we go. There. So basically, and I want to emphasize, this is a very short summary of the effects, and since the public health order has come in. So I just thought it'd be appropriate at this point in time that I give the council just a little heads up of where we are. And that, so obviously 2020 has been a very unusual year for the town, to say the least. That's probably a big understatement in that. I mean, overall, when we started the year, it was one of optimism. We had some additional revenues being recognized that would allow for a lower tax increase, but it has now turned into a year of uncertainty. So this presentation is only to really show the estimated effects of the public health order has had on our operation. It's not an in-depth analysis, and the true final effects are not yet known and won't be known until the order is lifted. It's also not a rehash of the budget presentation in July, when we spoke of various factors allowed us to present the balanced budget, or basically the balanced budget. So what effects have we had on revenues? Well, first of all, there's been a significant negative reduction. And overall, as a result of the public order, this revenue is being reduced, our revenues this year being reduced by $445,000. where that's made up as, where the significant areas we see the reduction, penalties and interest as a result of the waivers, where we've not charging interest on overdue accounts or waiving the fees, and that is estimated is going to be about $120,000 is what that will be. Tourism, about a $40,000 in not necessarily lost revenues. Some of the, but this is where we've decided to, because of for the Inuvik guide, the revenue that we normally get, we have deferred to next year. So that revenue is, and we get the cash this year, but the revenue will be shown in next year. So it really is a loss on us. A minimal one, but it's something we should look at, is about $17,000 in reduced water consumption. When you have a lot of the businesses in town and major businesses that have reduced operations and things like that, there is the potential of the lower. Now, there is some offsetting costs that you wouldn't have because we're not producing as much water. But in essence, we're looking at probably about $17,000 of reduction there. And the elephant in the room is the MSC. So $215,000 in approximate revenues that we are losing there. And basically that's broken down. As you can see, the arena is $29,000. The only reason the arena is a lower amount like that is, if you remember, the public health order came in basically after pretty well all our the January, February, March winter operations had wound down. So hockey and curling and everything and all those types of sports were basically finished. So we had recouped some money earlier in the year. So this is sort of the last part of the year. The pool is about $85,000. The other facility rentals, which is room rentals, the conference, the concession, things like that, it's about $74,000. And the fitness center with gym memberships, we're probably about $27,000 there. And those are relatively conservative estimates. And again, the final amount we'll have to see once this is all done. And finally, with the cancellation of the bingos, it's about $25,000 in license fees to the town that we are not receiving now. And we are looking at trying to get that going again, but it's going to be a bit before we can get there. The lottery committee will probably be meeting in the next couple of weeks. I have to send something out here later this week on it and see where we're at. But until we can get New North to see what their exact operating guidelines are to use that, until then, we are sort of on a bit of on a hold on that one. So that's sort of the revenue side of it. Obviously, though, with this, believe it or not, there can't be overlooked though, but we had some savings because of some of these, where these revenues are. And overall, those savings are reduced by about $365,000, our expenses in the year. And where those savings have come of basically salaries, which is about 200 and some $1,000. That is really a reduction mostly on the casual staff, where we haven't had to hire during the winter and things like this. So primarily with the pool, a little bit with the arena, and going forward on there. The pool repairs, we sort of moved the money around, but it really saved us $40,000 in repairs, but we do have a capital expenditure coming through on it. But that is used, we can use a different pot of money for those types of things, versus the pool repairs is just under an operational. Cancellation of the Arctic Development Expo is about a $40,000 net saving. And utilities, just because the buildings aren't being used as much and things like that, we're probably saving about $35,000 is an estimate there. So overall, you can see basically it's been an $80,000 deficit. You may say, well, we were able to receive additional fees regarding the operation of the isolation center that we were involved in. However, with other circumstances that have happened, really those fees have covered other shortfalls that we've had from our operations, and so have not been considered in here at this point in time. And with that, I'm quite happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, SAO Hood. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none. All right. Thank you for that presentation. With that, we'll move on to bylaws. Item 9.1, the solid waste collection bylaw. SAO Hood, did you want to present this item?
Certainly, sorry. So in front of you, you have the solid waste collection bylaw. There is some amendments that have been put in to it for your information. Going back to the fee schedule, referencing the fee schedule, we did have a separate bylaw that was for the dumping fees. We have now incorporated the wording into this. We feel that at this point in time, it goes more into having just one bylaw and then having one little bylaw that says 2 or 3 little things. And there was a section in here talking about, under section, basically, section 7 had already in there a thing about fees and exemptions. So therefore we did take and change and added the things from the dumping fees bylaw. We felt it was appropriate to put it in here, and then we will just repeal the complete dumping fees bylaw.
All right, thank you, SAO Hood. Were there any questions from council? Councillor Barlock?
So again, procedural. So when we do third reading on this, we're essentially doing third reading on this amended motion or amended bylaw.
Correct.
Require anything else? So, okay.
Anything further from council? Seeing none. With that, we'll move on to item 9.2 to appoint a director of finance. So James will be here in mid-October. I believe that getting first and second reading of this item done now means that upon his arrival, basically we can do third reading and he can start to work. Correct me if I'm wrong, SAO Hood?
Yes, it just appoints him as far as until then he wouldn't be able to have signing authority and things like that. He will be starting on the 13th of October. And the next scheduled council meeting where third reading for this would come is on the 14th, actually. So the timing is quite good.
Any questions from council? None. All right, on to 9.3, the vacant and derelict properties bylaw. Again, I'll hand it over to SAO Hood to present the bylaw.
So this one has been looked at, reviewed back and forth a number of times. It is on the council strategic priorities chart as one of the items to look at least as a start for that. And so we've gone through a number of iterations on it within the bylaw review committee, and those on the committee can certainly comment if they'd like. And it has gone back and forth from our legal counsel too, to make sure the wording, and we're trying to be consistent in many of the terminology we're using. So as we go, we're cleaning that up as well. I think, and that's really, the rest of it's pretty well self-explanatory.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from council on this bylaw? This is a big step forward, so I'm sure there's some conversation to be had. Councillor Barlock?
Great, thanks. Yeah, I've got a few things I wanted to ask about. A lot of them are just, I think, for greater certainty, clarifications. In section 3.2, so we talk about property owner shall notify the town prior to leaving their property vacant for an extended period of time. Do we have any guidance or definition or understanding of what would constitute an extended period of time, or is it something that we want to best leave undefined at this point?
We do not have anything specifically in there, but I can certainly look and see if a definition could be added, if not. But again, we don't want to put a specific timeline in there because it could be depending on the different circumstances.
Yeah, and that's why I say sometimes it's better to leave something undefined. It gives you more flexibility to deal with it. But just if there's a rule of thumb, even or guidance that other municipalities take, say if someone's going to leave an area vacant for 2 years or longer, that would be considered an extended period of time, or you know, something along those lines. So just kind of wondering whether we, as our town, had any sort of ideas on what we would consider this extended period of time for vacancy in order to do the notification. If I may continue. Next one I have is in 3.4. Property owners shall maintain steps, walkways, driveways, parking spaces, and similar to allow safe passage of emergency services under normal use. Considering these are largely vacant properties we're talking about, is this going to include things like snow clearing? And so for an example that we do have some properties, say down Industrial Road, they may be a little bit back from the road to access the property, the facilities there. If you had a fire in a building on that property and it hasn't been maintained as far as snow removal, are we going to expect property owners to now have that snow cleared from time to time in order to grant that access to emergency access under regular use? Just want to make sure I understand that.
I think part of it goes on to that the enforcement of this would probably be on a complaint basis, but again, it's up to the individual property owners. If they don't keep their property properly maintained and there's a fire, whose responsibility is it if the fire department can't get at the fire?
Okay. I got a couple more here. Next one I had was in 4.1. Just with respect to a peace officer has the reason to believe a property has become vacant, they may exercise a right of access to the property. I'm assuming this would obviously be documented in an appropriate way as to why they believe they have reason. And would any notice be required, or attempted notice be required to the property owner prior to them exercising that right of access in these situations?
It certainly would be documented, and no, they can go on the property. Again, it's not going into a building.
Okay, so that's the distinction there. It's just going onto the property itself, not necessarily into a structure.
The property is, it says it's not including but not limited to building structures, mobile buildings. So it could have a chance, but this clause has been vetted through our legal counsel.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. I just try to make it, a lot of these are just for greater certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had 5.1A. So by delivering notice personally to the person who's intended to be served. In this case, I'm assuming that means it's basically hand delivered in person. But what if you have instances in this situation where the owner no longer resides in the community, maybe not even in the territory, but say we're at a forwarding address that's known for them? I know in the next unsightly premises bylaw, there's a provision in there that allows for sending registered mail, but I don't see that same allowance in this section here. It's basically, you got to deliver it in person is my read. I just want to know why there doesn't seem to be an opportunity to do delivery by mail. If they can't.
It does. It says that in 5.1 in the preamble there at the end, it does say that it's one of the following methods. A, you're talking about in person, or B, because if the person is not known, the service may be affected by publishing a summary. So again, you have one of the choices.
Right, but in this case, where you're putting it in a newspaper circulation in the municipality or the NWT, say the owner resides now in Ontario, for example, and they're not necessarily tracking the Inuvik drum anymore, or the News North. That's, to me, I just worry that's not an effective means to try to get a hold of the person in this case. Because, I mean, you may still own property, but not actually be in this community anymore. And I just, again, wonder why we don't have an opportunity. If we have an address where we know to access the person or something like that, we wouldn't have that as an option to potentially send them a registered letter of notice. It's in the unsightly premises one, but it doesn't seem to be in this one.
Okay.
So I don't know.
We'll take a look at it and maybe come back for Wednesday, maybe, and confirm. And if we have to make an amendment before reading, would that be acceptable?
Yeah. And I think the last one I had was actually just a little spelling error in 9.1 on the end of the second line. Serious danger to public health or safety caused by an vacant should be a vacant, just for a small little correction.
Okay.
And that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barlock. Any other questions on the bylaw? Seeing none, hearing none. All right. With that, we can move on to 9.4, the proposed unsightly land and premises bylaw. Again, I will hand over to administration for presentation of the briefing note.
Again, this is a much more involved in that we have again gone through some iterations with the bylaw committee. And it's more just, I guess I'll leave it open. It's kind of self-explanatory as well.
All right, are there any questions on the bylaw? Councillor Barlock.
Just again, sort of small minor editing error in 2.1 sub 1, altering vehicle definition in the second line. Any combination thereof, and if a kind of predominantly used, I don't know if that's supposed to be is of a kind of predominantly used in the north. I don't know. I just know it just didn't read right. So, and I just wanted to note that. Otherwise, 4.2, I sort of had the same question about the peace officer exercising the right of access to a property, whether there need to be notice given ahead of time, but I think we covered that in the last bylaw. So otherwise, I think this one looks pretty good. That was all I really had for it.
Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Thank you. Just like to remind Councillor Barlock that I see you've read this thoroughly and you're very astute at picking out errors, questions absolutely, but errors, if you could just email those in. It doesn't need to be done here, and we've been asked multiple times not to do it here. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I just noticed it as I was reading it tonight, so I just thought I'd mention it. But
So one thing I would like to note is that these couple of bylaws before us, they have been looked at quite a bit, and we have had quite a few conversations in the past and in the past couple of years about how to deal with the unsightly and vacant premises that we do have in town. And these give us some real teeth to kind of move forward on trying to really address those issues. Because it had come up before, some of the things that we had asked about were things like, you know, is there a different property tax that can be given or things like that, just as a curiosity. And we're quite restricted by the current iteration of the PATA Act, which is a GNWT Act, which is the Property and Tax Assessment Act, which actually puts a lot of rules down on us as a municipality that ties us in a lot of those ways that we would have, you know, maybe like to look at maybe some outside of the box ways of thinking on doing things. So I want to thank SAO Hood and Stephanie and Director Hammond and the whole bylaw review team for looking at these so closely, because I think we do have some much meatier bylaws that we can move forward with to maybe start to take care of some of those problem buildings in town. So at this point, are there any further questions on the bylaw? I'm seeing none. All right, with that, we can move on to 9.5. which is the proposed water and sewer administration management and operations bylaw. Again, SAO Hood, if you'd like to present.
Okay. I'm just checking one thing here, but again, this is one that has been around for a number of years. I think 1998 is the last time this one was looked at. It was in need of a complete overhaul. It was done up just following the town's takeover of the water system. So we went through quite thoroughly in the bylaw committee. We've been at it for a number of months now, looking at it, combining a few things, looking at the fire hydrant bylaw. I think that was from 1979, and combining it in again, trying to simplify and combine certain things into a more comprehensive one-stop that common areas. So this one did get a lot of look at as far as with the fire hydrants and looking at different items on it. So it is a quite a significant change, including we did take a good hard look at the fees and the penalties too, because this is our water system. And so this is where we wanted to make sure that we have some regulations in place for that to protect it.
Great, thank you, SAO Hood. Were there any questions on this bylaw? Councilor Barlock?
Wouldn't want to disappoint. This one's real simple. I think the bylaw looks really good. This is more, I guess, in some ways, a bit of education and just better understanding. So 3.10 talks about fire chief shall determine locations of fire hydrant access paths, and that those paths shall identify locations of the hydrant access path by means of signs. Now, from what I understand, I'm not fully familiar with all this because thankfully I haven't had to deal with fires and hydrants and stuff. Do we have access paths that cross across people's personal property? I'm assuming that there are. And I saw later in the bylaw that the signs being talked about were going to be at the roadside to identify there. So I'm assuming those would be placed sort of within the town's right of way for the road. But I guess one thing that I didn't realize as a homeowner was that if I did have a hydrant near my home, that I would be responsible for maintaining that pathway and the area around the hydrant and keeping it clear. So that was news to me, good news, I guess, to understand that better, but it may be other people who don't fully understand that either. So I think this may be, once this is passed, a good time to sort of educate people with a bit of, again, a public posting or something, or putting out there just to make people understand if they do have, you know, that red section of the utility or near their house, that they do have some responsibility to keep that area clean and accessible in the case of a fire in the area. So yeah, I guess that's all. Again, the signs, just for clarity, they're at the roadside, and that'll identify the path. And I'm assuming the fire chief would work with the homeowner to make sure they identify exactly where that path exists. And then they would have the responsibility to keep that clean.
Yes, we're looking at that whole option of how to go about doing that, and looking. And as part of some of the discussion with all these different bylaws that are coming through, we plan on doing a bit of a PSA blitz over the next few months of just reminding everybody we're getting into the snow season. So, and different things like that. So for any of the changes, we will be doing a public campaign.
Great, thank you. Since we have her on the line, Director Hammond, was there anything that you wanted to add to this? Just to the question around the fire or the hydrant sections?
Thank you for the opportunity. As SAO Hood said, we are intending to do a public education campaign, more specifically with regard to hydrants and being able to locate hydrants. Inuvik is unique in that sense. Certainly any other jurisdiction, they actually have bylaws with regard to obstruction of hydrants, as well as clearing around your hydrants. It is even more challenging for us because you're looking at, you know, a couple of 100 feet where you're going through not only waist deep snow, you could be going through willows and everything. And it does cause a considerable amount of time delay when we're actually at an emergency scene. So it is certainly a necessary consideration, and I would hope that homeowners understand the importance of it, and we will certainly be making efforts to provide that education.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from council? Councillor Wood?
I certainly agree with the importance of keeping hydrants accessible, especially in the winter. However, in the case of disabled homeowners or seniors, for example, you're almost looking at them having to hire somebody to do this work. There's a financial consideration or financial burden here for that type of homeowner. Are we doing anything to offset that? For example, myself at 70 years old compared to Steve, I'm sure he can go out and shovel his access. However, if I had a house with access, there's no way I'm going to do it.
Great, thank you. Councillor SAO Hood?
I would have to say that we'll have to look at that, Councillor Wood. It's a good point, and we'll take it under advisement.
But
Yeah.
I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I was part of bylaw review and I probably should have mentioned it then, but it just came to mind tonight. So if you'd have another look at it, I'd certainly appreciate it.
Will do.
Yeah, I think there was a comment in there too that they're going to be doing like hydrant mapping around town. That may be an opportunity to identify if there are any of those specific situations that Councillor Wood's referring to. I would guess that for a lot of seniors, they may be in public housing, and then I assume it would be the GNWT's responsibility to keep that access path clear at that point. But there may be some private homeowners as well who are seniors or elders. But yeah, I think I'd be curious to see that hydrant map myself too, because I don't have a good understanding of where all of them are in town. I know where a few of them are, but not all of them.
We are in the process of developing, getting an updated map and a better map than sort of what we've had, just to ensure that happens. As far as public housing and responsibility, I'm not too sure how that works with public housing.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on the bylaw? Seeing none. With that, we can move on to 10.1, the financial report. This is the operating budget variance. SAO Hood, take it away.
Well, as you can see, I've now updated it. Really, we are doing significantly well, given the circumstances. Again, many times on these, what becomes difficult on presenting these budgets and the financials is the timing of when you think something's going to come in or come through, and a large expense doesn't show up until the next month or whatever. And so that shows you're doing well. But I think if you look at overall, for example, on the budget to date versus actual, a lot of that money is varied from our taxes or from where was it here? Yeah, up in the administrative with the land taxes and things like that, where some of this is the COVID, where the billings, we've had a large amount of expenses, but the billings haven't gone through yet. On the expense side, again, as you notice, we're well below budget on many of them. Again, a lot of it due to timing. And really, that's really all. There's nothing of any significant consequence that we see there that would put us off our forecast to the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the variance report? Seeing and hearing none. With that, we'll move on to item 10.2, the capital projects report. This is our first update in a while. I'm sure there are some questions on some items. I will hand it over to SAO Hood.
I'm open to questions.
We will open to questions.
I already answered mine earlier about the gateway sign.
Okay. Anything further from council? Seeing none. Alrighty then. Thank you for that. Information items, we had the strategic priorities chart. And any questions or comments on the chart? Seeing none. Council concerns this evening. I just wanted to remind everyone that Wednesday is Orange Shirt Day in honor of survivors of residential schools. If you have an orange shirt, just a reminder to wear it, and maybe we can even get a screenshot of all of us on screen in orange shirts if we remember. Was there anything else under council concerns this evening? I'm seeing none. All right. We do not have anything in camera tonight, so we can adjourn. Thank you, everyone. We will see you on Wednesday night at 7.